Welcome, everyone, and happy Sunday. It's not so sunny here in Southern California. I'm not sure. I think it's predicted to be a blue sky, but it's sure taking its time coming out today. So I'm happy to have you here with me, whether you're listening live or on replay. We're here to talk about all of life's questions and quandaries and things that have come up for you this week. So you may have a question about some of the stories in the book, Angels, Herpes, and Psychedelics. But most likely, you have a question about your own life and something that's happening. And I love to provide insights and wisdom on the show each Sunday at 11:11 we start. So the first 11 minutes is just a little bit of a soul calling out there for everyone to just relax and feel into what it is that they want to hear from their higher self. And I'm here to just help do a little bit of reflection of that. So thank you to everyone who has submitted questions in advance. We've got a lot of questions today. Hopefully I can get through them all. But if you are live on the line with me, by all means, send me a little PM and I will incorporate your question in to the whole routine here. So let's see. First question for today. I've recently started dating someone new and we're jumping in really fast. We met at an event and live in different states. After numerous phone conversations, he came to visit for a week. I really enjoyed it, but after he left, I felt my nervous system out of whack and a little anxious. Do you think we're moving too fast? Well, I think that's a great question. And if you've read my book, you know that I love to move fast in relationships. So she's asking probably the right person here. I don't know the details of this particular question and situation, but I will say that if you're asking the question, am I moving too fast? Chances are that's your soul saying, yeah, you might be moving a little too fast. It's always exciting when we get into romantic relationships and the chemistry's there and we want to get to know someone. And I think whatever way you want to take it is what's right for you. First of all, I'll say, but I also want to say that it's really something where you want to honor your own energy system, because when we bring someone into our life and we spend a week with them, right out the gate, we're pretty much entwining ourselves on each other's life cord pretty quickly. And of course, it depends too if there's sexual energy involved, if we're being intimate with them right away. But it's sort of like taking, 21st dates and jamming them all into a week, right? And so on one hand, I get it, and it can be fun and it can be exhilarating, and we can really get to know that person on another level. But I think the reality is that we're always going to be in our own fantasy land in the beginning when we get into a relationship, because we want to see and hear that person tell us everything that we want them to be. So it really takes time to really understand the dynamics of a person and what they're in your life for. Now, I know I've talked many times about this, but I also believe that the stronger the chemistry, the bigger the wound there is to heal. So it doesn't mean that you won't stay together. It doesn't mean that you'll, break apart. It just means that I think there's something there for you to really feel into and really understand what it is and why it is that you're attracting each other into this relationship. So am I moving too fast? I'm going to leave that up to you, but I think the fact that you're asking that question, just really feel into your soul and answer the questions for yourself on that one, because it can be that you're learning a lot in that first week. But then if we're constantly being entwined with someone, we're not able to actually get a feel for some of the deeper reflection that we need to have in between the dates that we have, the discussion and the feelings that we can, process on our own. In fact, I didn't address this part, but the nervous system out of whack. And feeling a little anxious. Well, I think that's really normal that you would feel that way, because you're really jumping deeply into this and creating a huge chemistry dynamic within your own system. And so it's something that you really want to have a lot more discernment around, which is how much you're going to share your energy with someone, because it's difficult to be with someone 24/7, especially someone who you've more recently met. Even though I know that from this, you've had numerous phone conversations and you've obviously vetted them, you know them, maybe you knew them in advance, maybe they're a friend even that you've known for years. But to jump in so fast and to just be 100% in each other's space 24/7 doesn't give you the processing time that you need. So of course it's going to fry out your nervous system. Of course it's going to create some anxiety. And then when that person leaves, it also creates a situation where you're really trying to just come back to yourself, because you've shared so much of you and your energy with the other person that it can be really distracting to your life, and also creates a huge spike in oxytocin levels. So when we're with individuals, especially in the beginning of relationships, oxytocin, shoots through the roof. And when that person leaves, there could be a little bit of a plummet. Because we don't have the physical affection, we don't have the eye contact, we don't have all of these things happening that were happening for the week that they were there. So lots of good juicy nuggets here in this question. I'm really happy that it was asked, because I do think that there's a lot to be said for spending time with someone and getting to know them on a deep level. But that interreflective time in between dates is also really, really helpful. So I would highly encourage you to just listen to your soul. And if you feel like you might be moving too fast, you probably are. All right. And if I haven't, and you're on the line and I haven't answered the question 100%, please write me in the chat, or if you're listening to the replay later, by all means, write me a question and I will be happy to go back and answer it either in the chat, or I will follow up with it again next week. So if I don't answer the questions that I get, because a lot of you have submitted them in advance and you're not here for me to clarify some things, let me know. Or maybe it's not your question, but the question resonates for you because you're going through something similar. Still feel free to write me in the chat and let me know that you want some extra clarity, or maybe you have a little bit different twist on your situation. So yeah, don't hesitate to write me on that. All right, so let's see. Question number 2 in this chat. Let's see what it says. My husband and I have been married for 25 years, and we can't get out of our patterns that pull us apart. I don't want to get a divorce, but I also don't feel like I can handle having the rug of support pulled out from underneath me when I least expect it. Any general advice, or when to call it quits, or how to determine if it's that time, or what I can do about it? Let me just see if I understand that question. So any general advice on when to call it quits, or how to determine if it's that time, or what I can do about it. Oh, if it's that time to call it quits, or if there's something that you can do about it. Again, I mean, these are very soul-based questions, very individual questions, but I do have some general responses that I'd like to share as a whole. Okay, so 25 years, that's a long time. And we get ingrained in our patterns in between each other. We're on each other's life cord for sure. And we have a lot of triggers that we've installed for each other. We know exactly how to get to the jugular. We know how to just push all the buttons and create issues in between each other. And so that's a beautiful opportunity to dive deeper into what those triggers are, because wherever you go, there you are. So we can't actually leave these things behind just by going to someone else. With that said, I think a big part of the equation is, are you both willing to do the work? So if you're both willing to do the work, that changes the dynamic exponentially. Yes, absolutely. Stay in it, dive deeper. Get to the triggers that you know are there. You've probably had numerous conversations over the years about what these triggers are, and that's why they're such triggers, because they're deep, deep, deep inside, and they're disappointments that keep coming back and keep coming back. And I think one of the things that comes to mind to say that's so important is, oftentimes we want to change the other person, or we want the other person to change, or we want the other person, well, they have to do this, then I will, you fill in the blank. And that's a really difficult place to put the other person, because the only person you can change is yourself. So it's really important that you think about, well, what is it that I'm bringing to the table? Because it's always easier to see what they're bringing to the table and what triggers you about them. But what is it about you? What is it about your ancestral lineage? What is it that you learned about love and about relationships from your relationship with your mother, your relationship with your father? What were those real core lessons? Or maybe it was that you felt abandoned, right? So there's a lot of different lessons that you learned early on in your life that impact who you are today and how you navigate in relationships. How did your parents communicate? How were they connected in their ability to have conflict resolution? What was it that they were able to do or not do? Because oftentimes it's the things that they were not able to do that create a bigger issue for you, because you didn't learn the coping skill, you didn't learn the mechanism of how you can actually resolve these issues. So definitely 25 years is a huge investment. I wouldn't jump ship so quickly, and I'm sure you're not planning to, but I understand that feeling of wanting to just make it stop, make it go away. And sometimes you have to take a break. And I'm sure you've probably considered that as well, that there's, some ways that we can be separate in the same household, or there's ways that we can take a break and remove ourselves so that we can process at a deeper level, because sometimes just getting the trigger every single day can create more trauma. And so for ourselves, and so we have to have that discernment within ourselves as to how we can really just go deep within. But it's that inner reflection, and inner reflection takes silence, and it takes quiet time, and it takes removing yourself sometimes from the household. And I just mean, maybe it's an hour that you go out, and maybe you just drive into the country, or maybe you go to a park if you live in the city, or something where you can just get away from your environment and everything that's happening that triggers you in this environment. That's the silence and the quiet time that you really need. And maybe it's a week away. Maybe you sign up for some kind of a retreat. Maybe it's just getting to the yoga class that you always know that you want to go to, because it brings that inner silence and that inner peace. So those are some tips that I would say that I think are really helpful. Now, one that I would highly recommend, if you feel called, but only if you feel called, and the train is also saying yes on this one, because it's about to go by and give us the positive reinforcement that what I'm going to say next is a great recommendation, which is you may want to consider doing a psychedelic journey with your spouse. Why? Because I know that this can really help you break through walls very quickly, depending upon what type of journey you may or may not be interested in. Something like psilocybin can be very helpful to just shut off the default mode network, and to shut off all these programs and all these triggers and all these things, these storylines that are keeping you really trapped in the conflict, as opposed to opening your heart and into love, because it is so hard, especially as women. I don't know why this is, but women have a photographic memory, and they remember everything that their man has done for them in their lifetime that's hurt them. And so that's not very helpful for the man, because most of the times he doesn't remember anything of what happened. And it becomes very frustrating for the man in the partnership, because they don't really want to have to hear about this again when they don't even remember what it was that happened. So I think a psychedelic journey provides a really incredible way to cut through all of those storylines and all of these ideas that we have built up, and this resentment that we have held in our hearts, and the disappointment that's been created through all of the disappointments being the down cycle of our relationship, right? And sometimes it's hard to focus on the highs and the things that we really love that person for, because the resentment is so great. So psychedelic journeys can be an incredible way to take, just throwing it out there, 20 years of couples counseling and therapy, down to a session that's within a day's period of time. And of course, the integration is really, really important there. But it does give that pattern disrupt and an opportunity to see things differently. So I would highly recommend that you consider the possibility, if you both feel called, to sit with the medicine and to really, because when you sit with the medicine, you're sitting with your higher self. You're sitting with yourself beyond the ego mind and the constructs and all the resentment and disappointments and everything that's come your way. So I would highly recommend that if you feel called. And of course, if you do, then finding the right setting, and server is also so very, very important. So I talk a lot about that. You can check out on my YouTube channel other videos where I'm talking about finding the right server. So because that's a little bit off topic for today. All right, let's get to the next question. I think we've got some really good stuff going on here. Good questions coming in. Okay, here's another one. My mother is so difficult to deal with that I haven't spoken with her in over a year. I don't feel I even want to try to rekindle, but it also doesn't feel great to have this wedge between us. What should I do? Leave it? Well, that's a tough one too. Not knowing the details. I think every relationship is here for our healing. And man, I'll tell you, those family ones, they are the real buggers, because they're the programs that we got installed with, right? So they're reflecting back elements of ourselves, because that's how we learned love. One of the things that comes to mind right away is if you haven't already tried a family constellation session, I think that is a great way to get deeper into the subconscious mind of your mother, into the programs that she's running, so that you can see what programs you're running as a result of being raised by her. So there's always some juicy pearls and nuggets when it comes to the family. In fact, I always like to say, because especially living in Bali and Ubud, everybody, felt so enlightened and so spiritual, and yeah, we were all doing our work, and yeah, it's great. But I would always laugh and say, but we know how enlightened we really are when we go back and spend some time with our family, because that puts all of our programs front and center, our triggers, how we learned love. And so, yeah, when we have these issues with one of our parents, it is deep, and a lot of times it's ancestral. And that's why I think family constellation work can really be helpful, because sometimes it's just a program that your mother's been running and she doesn't even know that she's running it, and it's something that came down from the lineage. And so in family constellation work, we can hand back what isn't ours, and it's helpful because it helps heal the lineage in the past, even with our loved ones who are passed over and crossed over, but it also helps the lineage forward. So if you have children, it helps you to break that pattern, so that you're not just continuing to instill that program within your children, for them to carry on and for them to have, the same suffering. So I always found it to be fascinating, because people learn things about their parents, their loved ones, whoever they were doing their family constellation about. They learned so much about something that was a blind spot, something that they didn't realize, like, oh, yeah, that makes sense. Because if you're not familiar with family constellations, I chat about them in the book, but I go deeper in the Awakening and Healing Handbook. So you can find that on bethbell.me. It goes into the details, and I also list some facilitators that I explicitly trust, that I know would do an incredible job. And you don't have to be in the same room with them. I've always liked to do the live sessions, and I participated and volunteered a lot in Bali, because I got so much out of it as a volunteer when I was able to channel energy for people and represent characters in their lives. It was just an amazing experience for me. So if you have an opportunity to go to a live session, I would definitely encourage you to do that. But if you don't, it also works very well on Skype, and each practitioner has a little bit different methodology as to how they do this, and especially when they're doing it online through Skype. But I've seen it work, and so don't shy away from the fact that you may not have someone right near you and a place to go. And again, in the Awakening Healing Handbook, I talk more about family constellations, and I also give some names and some numbers and some contact information for facilitators that I think you would really enjoy, and that can really get you to the heart of the matter. So I definitely wouldn't leave it. Your mother is an important character. It's also important to remember that when we came into these meat suits and this lifetime, we had a soul contract with a lot of people, and our parents are certainly, and our immediate family are certainly people that we have very intricate soul contracts with. Probably most likely have run with them and our soul circle in other lifetimes. And sometimes they can be really deep and embedded and entangled. And so you may have been, your mother's sister, or you may have been the mother in a previous life, or the father. So yeah, there's lots of different roles that these souls in our life play coming into this lifetime. So don't give up on it, because if you give up on it, you're just going to find that same lesson somewhere else, maybe in another relationship that emulates that same wound that is up for healing, that same annoying issue that continues to happen between you. So yeah, don't give up on it. I would go deeper, family constellation, and yeah, that's probably the first thing I would recommend. Of course, you could also try some kind of a psychedelic journey, but it feels like family constellation work is a really good start. So again, let me know if there's any additional thoughts or questions that you have pertaining to your mother. All right. So, all right. So here's another one. A dear friend of mine recently passed after a struggle with cancer. How do I move beyond these feelings of deep sadness? First of all, you don't. It's really important that you feel the feelings and you feel the sadness, because that is part of the process. I'm not an expert on the grieving process. I'm sure there are lots of experts that can provide very specific tools in the grieving process, but what I do know from personal experience and from knowing a little bit about souls crossing over is that it's important to mourn that. It's important to feel that. It's important to be in our heart center and not in our mind, and not telling ourselves, oh, I'm just going to get over that. But it's also important that after a period of time, that you're also able to change the storylines, and that you don't just sit in the sadness and the grieving, because that also will not be helpful for you. So there's a healthy place of really grieving and feeling into the loss of that individual. Sometimes it's talking to others that also knew the person, or just talking to your close loved ones and sharing, your sentiments about this individual. I also think whenever we lose someone, it's a great opportunity to go out to the people that we love that are still here and tell them exactly how we feel about them, in a very loving way, so that nothing gets left unsaid when they pass. Because I know for me, I also recently had someone that a little bit of a shock. I knew she was sick, but I didn't know that she was actually, ready to pass over. And so it was a little bit challenging for me to get that news and feel a little bit shocked, and to not have been able to say goodbye. So yeah, that it can be very difficult. But the other thing that comes to mind is, and this is what I did with a dear friend of mine that recently passed, is I just set the intention to have a conversation with her on a soul level, and just, I didn't do this, but sometimes I have in the past, where I get two teacups, 2 coffee cups, and sit it and just have a little soul conversation with that person. And sometimes it brings tears, and sometimes it brings happiness, and just taking a moment to cherish what that person brought to my life. And so I think that all of those things can be really nice things to do, to just connect on a soul level. And you never know how someone might actually show up for you from the other side, crossed over, but still here, making an impact. I've had lots of interesting things happen to me over the years. So be open to actually hearing from them. Be open from getting the signs, whether it's a butterfly or maybe a dove that flies in, and sits somewhere right next to you, and you've never seen a dove do that, or an owl, or it could be a spirit animal. Just sometimes there's just really interesting things. We also can get whiffs, like scents of our loved ones that have passed over, the perfume that they wear or whatever. And don't doubt it. I think, early on in my journey, I just thought, oh, I'm just making this up. And what I realized is that no, it's real. We really can bring in their essence, and it's really just about feeling into it and knowing that they are with us on the other side, and that they most likely are playing a role for us, that's very instrumental in our life, from the other side, and they're seeing things completely differently now, and being without their heavy meat suit, and the vibration that we hold here to be a human on earth is very precious. And once we leave these bodies and we go into 100% freedom, and we're with spirit, and we're really connected, back to source, because we're not living from our ego mind and our physical body, lots of great things happen for us, lots of wonderful realizations. And so I do believe that there is a very happy time for individuals who cross over. It doesn't necessarily make it easier for us that are still here on the earth plane, but I do believe that they're learning great things and seeing life through a completely different lens, on the other side. So I hope that helps. And if not, by all means, feel free to give me a little bit more information in the chat, and I'm happy to answer a little bit more. So let me check this chat and just see how we're doing. Okay, I have to toggle back and forth. And okay, so another question that was posted here is, oh, this is a good one. I've been wanting to write my book for years, but am worried that no one will read it, or if they do, pass judgments about me. I want to share my life experience. How do I move beyond the fears I have in order to get it done? Well, I can tell you from my personal experience that when Spirit said to me, grab that pencil and that white journal, you're going to write a book about your life. I always wanted to write a book, as I've said many times, but I wanted it to be more like the wisdom book. I didn't want it to be like all the things that made me super vulnerable and things that, create a feeling of shame or, So, I mean, it was a labor of love to bring forward all of my experiences, but I just really knew deep within my heart that I'd learned so much through everything that I had gone through, that I wanted to share the learnings with everyone else. And the way to do that was to share my heart and what was happening and how I felt, and how the good, the bad, the ugly, the joyful, the scary, how I was able to navigate through that. Sometimes I did a great job and sometimes I didn't. Sometimes I had to repeat the lesson over and over. So I think that what's important about this question is write the book, and decide later if you need or want or desire to publish it, because it doesn't have to be something that you publish. It can be something that you write for yourself. It can be something that you write in its totality, and then you just take portions of it and you post it on your blog, or you contribute in a different way. So it doesn't always have to be that it's this full-blown, 100% published book out there. So write the book. That is my main thing to say. And don't worry about everyone else, because it doesn't matter. I mean, there are going to be people that are naysayers about what you have to say all the time. So just keep going, write the book, live your passion, and decide later what you're going to do with it. I know some people have been writing a book for 8 years or more. Some people, I got mine done in a year and a half, but that was, by complete divine guidance and an opportunity I had to really focus on the book as a majority of my time. So I felt very blessed for that. But write the book for sure, all of you. And if you want tips, tools, send me a little note in PM, and I'm happy to share some additional information that I think will really help you, especially early on in your book writing process, or even just thinking about how to start it or what to do, or any of those details I'm happy to share. So just give me a little PM. All right. And how do I move beyond the fears I have in order to get it done? Well, I guess it depends upon what your fears are. I think that it's important that you identify, what am I fearing? And then you can take that fear and transmute it into love and light. And I think right there, honestly, that is the lesson, that if you're inspired to write a book, you're inspired because your soul is perhaps asking you to do a little bit deeper reflection. I'm actually assuming, now that I say this, I'm assuming that it's a book, like a memoir about yourself. So if it's something else, then it might be a little bit different. But I'm assuming this question came from someone saying that they want to write like their own memoir about their own life and details there. So yeah, I think the fears that you have about writing the book are the fears that are up for you to actually be working through. So don't shy away from them. Very, very important to not shy away from whatever those big fears are and move through them, because it's all about truth telling. Life is about truth telling. It's about telling the truth to yourself. It's about telling the truth to others. It's about shining the light and showing the way. Because I know if you were listening to this, chances are you are someone who's awakened, aware, and on the ascension journey. So I'm super excited you're here. All right. Okay. So next question. How many years on average does it take to become enlightened? Well, this is a great question. And I think somebody's setting me up here because, of course, there is no answer to this. It's really very individual. I mean, we hear about biblical stories about Jesus in 40 days in the desert. We hear about Buddha sitting under, the tree and becoming enlightened after, escaping his palace and his future as a king, to see the suffering that's out there on the road. And then he decided to sit and understand more what is this suffering? Why are we suffering? And as a result of sitting in deep inner reflection, was able to become an enlightened person. And so what does that mean for us? I don't necessarily think any of us are called to sit under a tree, but if you are, do it. And I think our journeys are beautiful and we've planned them out before we even came here. So whatever that journey is, do the journey, not the destination. So I think that even as we ascend and we start to feel that we really are more enlightened or we're more in touch with our intuition, as you know from my book, you're going to get more lessons and you're just going to keep going with the ascension, and things are going to happen in a different scale, in a different way, with a different person. And so, we don't escape the journey, nor do we want to. So be in the flow. In fact, I was just watching something last night that I thought was such a great reflection of just reminding us that, it is all about being in the flow. It was a program about miracles, and Morgan Freeman went and interviewed a bunch of different people that had miraculous experiences, as well as people who had religious beliefs. And at the end of the day, it is about being connected and being in flow with our higher self and our soul's plan, as opposed to letting the ego mind drive, which can get super crazy and out of control really quickly, because the mind runs on all the programs, right? And the programs are good. Well, it's not about good or bad. I mean, some of the programs are good because they are programs that help us not have to repeat lessons, right? But it's the programs that are holding us back that we want to get rid of. There's no need for those. We don't need the judgments and the self-deprecation of these things that oftentimes come through the ego mind and are then reflected back to us from our external environment. So, all right. So how many years on average? It depends. I think that one of the things that has been so interesting as I have had more experiences with psychedelics is that when you do psychedelics, not for everyone and not on every time, it just really is still very individualized. You have an opportunity to see way beyond your mind and to really be in touch with your higher self and to really connect into that knowingness of oneness, the bliss of divine oneness. So I think that psychedelics certainly do not make you enlightened. I think they show you that North Star, as I always talk about, and they show you what an embodiment of pure, unconditional love feels like. And then it's just a beautiful journey to just keep experiencing all of life's ebbs and flows as to, what does that feel like? What does that look like? How do I sustain that? How do I bring that here, in my body, in my chakras? How do I stay in my third chakra? How do I stay grounded? How do I bring this higher wisdom that we learn from psychedelics into our everyday life. And so, yeah, I think enlightenment is a tricky question, and there's always more and more and more that we can learn, and it's the beauty of it. Actually, it's the unfolding, it's the unraveling of the mind, which is obviously the show. So yeah, that's a great question, and not one that has a specific answer. Okay, let's see. Other questions here. All right, so this one says, okay. You mentioned many stories in the book about experiencing people who have crossed over. The man in Bali who came to his parents at the healer, the dead guy on the cruise, and a few more. Do you regularly talk with dead people? No, I don't actually. And I don't know, but early on in my life, and I think I talk about this specifically in the book, that I've always been worried about, well, back then, I was always worried about not who would walk through my door, but what entity or spirit might visit me. And I always kind of blamed it on, like, there was this movie, scary movie. I can't think of the name right now, but when I was little, and it just freaked me out about spirits and, Ouija board and all that stuff. It was just like, it really freaked me out. Looking back now, I think I realized that I actually had an affinity and a sensitivity to it, which is why I didn't want to play in it. And I just always felt like it's not my role to speak with the other side. For me personally, I mean, I do and I will, but it's not something that I cultivate. It's not something I encourage. It's not something that I feel a calling to do, to be a channel for others. For me personally, I feel like it's a bit of a distraction for my journey specifically, to spend a lot of time with spirits crossed over, or spirits in other realms, mostly because my focus is really on the bliss of divine oneness. So it's going all the way to the Godhead, and bringing and emulating and emanating and illuminating that light that we have within when we're connected to Source, that we always have within. But it's a choice to really feel that connection, and to be able to quiet the mind, and to bring that embodiment through. So I don't do that frequently. As you referenced, there are several opportunities that came to me throughout my life so far, and I anticipate there will be more, where I was able to connect into spirits. But it's not something I do. However, with that said, I think it's so important that we do. And a lot of us haven't cultivated that gift. Let's be real. Like, it's not something that a lot of people can do. And it may be something that a lot of people aren't intended to do. So I don't want people to feel pressure to, like, unlock that within themselves. If it's not a gift that they're here to unlock in this lifetime, there's so many incredible people that do. And again, I'll reference back to the Awakening and Healing Handbook. I list some incredible resources. All of the healers, I'll call them healers, but psychic mediums, people that are helping us on our ascension journey, they're all listed in the Awakening and Healing Handbook. I didn't want to leave anyone out from all the beautiful things that have happened with me, and the beautiful teachers and reflectors and healers and psychics that have provided so much information and guidance for me. So I've listed them all in the Awakening and Healing Handbook, which you can find on bethbell.me. In fact, I'll try to remember to put a link in the video below, so that you actually can have just easy access over to it. And if you sign up for the newsletter, you get a special deal. It's like $9.99. So it's well worth it. It's actually, gosh, I don't know, 150 pages or something. Like, it's a book in and of itself. It's quite robust, with lots of great information on healing and ascension, and tips and techniques and modalities, and more information than what I talked about in the book. So the book was more about some of the stories and things that happened for me personally, and the Awakening and Healing Handbook provides more insights on each one of the different modalities. So it's quite a bit different material, and really worthwhile. So I hope you'll check that out. Okay, we're coming down to the end here, and I just want to see. Okay, this question is a little bit, I'm not sure I totally get it, but I think what they're asking is there's lots of stories that they felt were like that there was missing details about. And so I get that. And, I may have mentioned before that the book started out at 130,000 words. And of course, I didn't know anything about words and books and whatever. And I was highly encouraged to get it down to 80 to 100,000. And so the book is at 100,000 words. So there was 30,000 words. So 30,000 bits of stories that got cut out. And so, yes, there may be some stories that you go, I wish I knew a little bit more on that. So if there's something specific, I'm happy to answer that on next week's call. But I also would say in general that the book was really intended to talk about my stories from a learning perspective. Like, what did I learn from it? What were the pearls of wisdom that I gained from it? And I didn't want to expose what someone else may be learning in their life or in their journey, because I don't think that that's appropriate for just confidentiality reasons, even though everyone's names are changed. Excuse me, most names are changed. So yeah, it really was an intentional thing to cut out some aspects of the stories. And again, I wish I could have kept all the details in, and yet I had to just trim down the book. But speaking of five pearls of wisdom, the other thing I haven't mentioned, and I don't know why I don't talk about very often, but there's five pearls of wisdom that I have as like big takeaways from the book as a whole. And there's a five pearls of wisdom worksheet. And I have them right here on a little sticky note that I always have next to me, which is trust, intuition, transformation, letting go, and surrender. So those are the five pearls of wisdom that I think are just really big for our ascension journey and big for the lessons that we're here to learn in our lifetime. And the little worksheet, workbook, the Five Pearls of Wisdom workbook is really helpful to just kind of hone in on, well, where do I want to work? Because sometimes I think this journey can be overwhelming because there's so many things that we're like, where do I start? It's like, is it trust? Is it intuition? Like, is it transformation? Is it letting go? Is it surrender? And so I think that workbook is very helpful in helping you to just hone in on where. And then the Awakening and Healing Handbook, it kind of helps you navigate some places to do it. So I look forward to hearing any feedback you have on those as well, because they have had just great receptivity, and I don't talk about them as much as I'd like to. So any last final questions? We are just about down to the hour here. I think I've gotten, let me double check my little list here. To see if we've got anything else. No, I think we're good. And I'm just going to triple check over on YouTube just to see in case there's any additional ones that I haven't already answered. All right. So I think we are good. Any other last chats? Any other last questions? Then I think what we're going to do is we're going to close out for today. And I look forward to seeing you next week. Again, remember 11 o'clock Pacific time, because I'm in Southern California, and Sundays. But the first 11 minutes is more of a soul's calling as I play the God Code. And the God Code for me is such a centering sound and a way to connect to the divine. And I would offer for you to also come and join for that first 11 minutes to hear the God Code and to feel into the God Code and to see what might come forward for you to either ask or take away from some of the discussions that we're having here in regards to others' questions. So please join next week, 11 o'clock, and 11:11 the discussion starts. So you can always watch the replay. I'd also love it if you are watching on YouTube and you can subscribe, give us a like, even ring the bell, because that will give you notifications of when the next video